Hello, everyone. I wanted to reach out to you again to spread the message. And today I wanted to speak about how God punishes and rewards people. Now, first, I want to say that a lot of people definitely have some wrong ideas about what God is. And I say that because a lot of people are willing to spread memes and images and cartoons and whatnot of, for example, God being like an old man in the sky. And people imagine that for God to, have visible impact in the world, that it has to be like a very obvious thing. And I think what people are neglecting is that God is capable of influencing things through both divine intervention and also through the setting up of causal systems. So we can one of the main ideas, or like the one of the extreme versions of that second idea, is that God theoretically could have arranged all the matter inside the supersphere of the pre-Big Bang universe such that once the Big Bang started, all of the matter in the universe would arrange in such a way that it would cause our particular solar system to exist in the way that it did, and for our Earth to exist the way that it is, and for our life to unfold on Earth as it is now, just by the perhaps by the arrangement of the particles in the universe combined with possibly some more divine intervention directly. If you look at the quantum science, there is a sort of apparent randomness in how the subatomic particles move, perhaps maybe the electrons, if I'm not mistaken. And some people believe and argue that this is random, but there is a competing hypothesis that it's not actually random, that there's just a unknown causality behind it. And I do think that is possible. It is possible also for God to be intervening in the motions of subatomic particles, to be manipulating them. You have to really think about what does it mean for God to be infinite. And part of that is that God could be manipulating the smallest details everywhere all at the same time. And I think a lot of people barely even try to understand that as deep as it could go. So, whatever. And my main thesis today is that when we speak about the punishment of God, it's actually, to me, what I would emphasize is not necessarily the idea of hell after death, but actually the consequences of our own actions in this life, or the things that happen after our actions. So, if you look at a chess game, people will make moves. They're trying to supposedly accomplish the goal of capturing the enemy king, checkmating the enemy king, and then they make particular moves. But every time you make a move in chess, you give your opponent an opportunity to make a different move. And every time your opponent makes a move, you should ask yourself, what change occurred in the threat potential because of this move? What are the causal effects of this move? So, for example, and this can be quite dangerous in subtle ways. So let's say your enemy has a queen and he just moves it one square off to the side, and you think to yourself, oh, that doesn't matter. And so you just go ahead with your original plan. But, you didn't notice that at the diagonal he could take your rook with the queen. And then you move forward your plan, and maybe it was a decent plan, but all of a sudden you're down a rook, and then you're at risk of losing the game, potentially. So, that's a chess example, and I hope you can relate to that or imagine it. I just made that mistake myself, actually. So, but let's think about some other examples. So, a very political example is what's going on in the current 2024 presidential election between, now it's supposedly Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, and before that it was supposed to be Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. And what happened is that it appears, apparently, the White House, the Democrat Party, the establishment media, as we call it, was covering up the medical condition, the cognitive decline of Joseph R. Biden. And, I have to put myself in certain limits here, but my point is that the people who involved in this cover up, they thought that they were doing a good thing by doing this. They thought, oh, if we cover up this medical condition, then this achieves some positive end. So let's say even if for now, let's give them the benefit of the doubt in the idea that maybe Donald Trump is actually a major threat, and maybe it's worth certain sacrifices to keep him out of the White House. But you have to ask, what sacrifices should you be making? Should you be sacrificing your integrity to achieve such a goal? If this opposing candidate, Donald Trump, if he's such a major threat, should you really be telling lies to defeat him? Can't you find another way? Can't you just change your policy position? Can you find a qualified candidate? Can you just do something else? Like, why do you have to tell lies? And as I said in the previous video, I don't want Republicans to just have an uncontested supermajority forever, because I know people have evilness in their hearts, and corruption is then kind of a natural entropic tendency. If people are uncontested, then they will naturally tend to just bend the rules more and more to their advantage. And so we have to think about the consequences of these things. So my point is that, I believe currently that Donald Trump will win the election for the 2024 presidential race, as long as he's alive and as long as the elections are conducted in a fair and honest manner. And so also, I believe that the Democrat Party will lose a lot of its credibility. I believe that establishment media has already lost a lot of its credibility. I believe the Democrats have already lost a lot of their credibility because, this is such an obvious and critical thing. You would think that the President of the United States should be cognitively capable. And it should not be, I think part of the reason that Joseph Biden became the Democrat nominee and then eventually the president was he had this prior track record of being the vice president and of serving as a senator for a long time. And he ran multiple times to become president as early as the 70s, apparently. And so apparently he really wanted to be president. He kept trying. And perhaps he felt entitled. He's like, I'm so old, I got to do it. I got to get that achievement. I got to put it on my record. But, I say, let's go back to the Jesus quote, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and give unto God what is God's. And that's normally used in the context of taxation, but we can interpret that in other ways as well. So, if I could speak to Biden, if I could go back in the past and speak to Biden, I have to ask yourself, is that God's will for your life to become president? Or is that really, are you actually if you could review yourself objectively, are you the best person for the job? Why did you have trouble in the past, and if you look at, if you review the statements of Joe Biden, he's told many lies, and some of them quite blatant, such as claiming to have gone to the black church when he was young, and then he goes to a black church and he doesn't know how to act, and that's noteworthy. I feel like if I was there, I'd be I'd be having a good time, you don't need to freeze up. You just relax and enjoy yourself. Anyway, the point is that when you tell lies, you lose your credibility, and then as you losing your credibility is a consequence. And this, I would say, that loss of credibility or the other consequences of lies, that is God's punishment for you telling lies, because we say God created the world and then he determined where all the particles and all the atoms would be. He decided that, and he determined how the particles would spread out and form the world that we live in. And then he decided that, decided how the human mind would operate. And so this would lead to people losing faith in liars, and we have other valid reasons to distrust people who tell lies. That's kind of obvious. And so I don't want to dedicate this video to politics. I want this video to kind of have eternal resonance, and I don't want it to just be specific to this current year election. I just want to use that election as an example. I just want to use these political references as an example of this broader idea. So when you look at other examples, think about other people who have told lies. Think about the lies you might have told in the past. Why did you tell those lies? You probably told those lies because you thought that it would give you some advantage. And I've done it before. I try my best to minimize it, but that was ideal. I think one of the recent times I told a lie was I had to meet a girl's mother-in-law because I wanted to date this girl. And the mother-in-law meets me and she asks me, how many times do you read the Bible? How often do you read the Bible? And I was like, I wanted to date this girl so bad, so I lied. I said, I read the Bible once a week. And that's not even true. I don't read the Bible on a regular basis. But I just, in the moment, I felt like, I have to say it. This matters so much to me. And she was like, even then, that was not enough. She was like, no, that's not enough. You have to read the Bible every day. And so I was like, what? Did that really benefit me? I compromised my integrity, to get a girl. And then I kind of half-assed it. I went halfway with it. So it's not as if I made a positive impression anyway. And then let's just say hypothetically I lied even harder. I was like, I read the Bible every day. And then, she'd be like, well, tell me what Ephesians 6:7 says. And whatever. That I would have been caught out even harder. So it's just let's say instead that I just told the truth. I'd be like, no, I don't read the Bible on a regular basis. Obviously, she wouldn't like that. She'd be like, you should read the Bible on a regular basis. She could still say you read the Bible every day, but at least I know that I didn't compromise my integrity, my honesty in the process. So that's a personal example. So I want you to reflect on this idea of, what God is and how he operates in the world. So restating the point, it's not, God doesn't just operate through direct intervention or obvious actions. The causality, cause and effect, that itself is God's action in the world because he established the rule of cause and effect. So that's important to keep in mind. Okay, one more thing. So before I'd mentioned this idea of, people imagining God as a man in the sky. And I want to say that I can now, after a certain period of time, I was able to understand why does Islam prohibit making images of Muhammad, peace be upon him, or of God, whatever the proper suffix is for that in Arabic. I don't know. Whatever. So the point is that I think the Muslims are right about this, at least a little bit, because once you have an image of God or of any sacred person or super sacred person, then people can start making parodies or having misconceptions. So someone like Renaissance artist or some other person made an image of God as an old man in the sky, and then from that point forward, people were able to use that against the idea of God, because they would imagine this old guy in the sky and be like, that's not real, we went up in the sky and there was no God there, and then not understanding that God is like a multi-dimensional superpower, invisible superpower, or supposedly invisible superpower, whatever. Or with Jesus, there's people started producing images of Jesus as a long-haired person. And then, but best of my knowledge, if you look in the Bible, there's no physical description of what he looks like. People speculate, it's common to draw him as a white person, whatever. And then someone was like, oh, here's a realistic image of Jesus. It's like an ugly person. Like, why would he be ugly? He could be, I definitely think it's realistic for him to be darker skinned, but not ugly. He would at least not be an ugly person. I think that'd be going too far. But, whatever. So, additionally, when people make these images of Jesus, they represent him with long hair, and people think, oh, long hair, that means he's a hippie, that means he's peace and love, that means he's not judgmental, that means he's tolerant and accepting, and so on and so forth. But it's like, I don't think so. Or not as much as these people say, because he certainly would have condemned a lot of he would back up a lot of the prohibitions from Deuteronomy, which are the more controversial prohibitions of the Bible, that people currently get very triggered about. So anyway, yeah, these are basically the main points I want to bring up today for today's video. And my desire is to upload a video every Tuesday, because apparently that's what I can sustain. But we'll see what happens. I suppose, God willing, I'll keep up with that. Have a good day, and goodbye.